Welcome to In-Frame Out's Year in Film, where we take stock of 12 months of spectacular cinema and unfortunate rubbish. Of the 143 films we saw from 2019, we've painstakingly narrowed them down to our own private top 10 best and bottom 10 worst films of the year. Some things we missed, some we outright avoided, and some just didn't get a cinematic release in the UK yet. But before we get to the main event, let's take some time for the honourable and dishonourable mentions that you can all consider tied for 11th place in their respective categories. Honourable mentions. An absurdist, quintessentially British poison pen letter to giallo and psychedelic horror. It's either an affectingly creepy comedy or an off-kilter weirdo slasher about a killer dress in a satanic boutique. To say anything beyond that baffling collection of words and influences would be to spoil the oddness of it all, so let's just say you'll probably be left scratching your head as to what it is, but you'll have a wonderful gut-laughing time during all that confusion. As Birds of Passage chronicles the birth and rising bile of the Colombian drug trade, it manages to excavate the often overlooked tribal and cultural foundations of the business. Eons of teachings, practices, and beliefs are all but eradicated within one generation by the introduction of technology, Western greed, and capitalistic short-sightedness. This is world cinema that truly encapsulates our common global ambitions and faults within a familiar and effective rise and fall gangster narrative framework. Aniara sees a colony ship destined for Mars descend into dystopian squalor as, following a catastrophic engine malfunction, it misses its destination and is left to float forever out into deep space under its own inertia. High Life takes on a more obtuse psychosexual edge as an isolated prison ship pushes its crew beyond the point of breaking. Two peas in a cold pod drifting through the stillness of space, Aniara and High Life are complementary, moody, and artful sci-fi wonders that ponder the existential forces placed on humanity when faced with empty oblivion.
You exist beyond these walls. You extend beyond your forefathers.
A lyrical, hard-fought swan song for the stock we put in physical space, and the tight grip with which we cling to our internalized understanding of home and what it means to belong. The slippery rungs of the property ladder and the gentrified death of geographical identity form the basis for this deeply empathetic, gorgeously photographed snapshot of a tectonically shifting San Francisco. It's a film of few words, but every single one adds up to a soulful, exhaling triumph.
Hey, you motherfuckers wanna get weird?
With the most brilliant, commercially unviable title I can recall, the death of Dick Long plays out like Fargo if William H. Macy was swapped out with a pair of Nickelback-loving, beer-chugging rednecks. It's an often absurd, always engaging comedy of errors, which veers off into open-mouthed, uncomfortable directions, best left unspoiled. Stupid is rarely written as smartly as this.
Mothers need time to learn. Raising a good child is no small task.
With a cast you can count with a few fingers, and an antiseptic post-apocalyptic shelter as its primary location, I Am Mother wrings every ounce of moral and philosophical intrigue from its high concept and modest budget. Mother's design is a marriage of simplicity and believability, realised by some of the year's most understated and seamless effects work, while the airtight story makes for one of the most thought-provoking indie sci-fi breakouts since Moon. Full-hearted magical realism meets desperately bleak Scandi noir in this eclectic study of race, loneliness, and what we endure to feel wanted. Eva Melander is transformative as Tina, a physically distinctive border guard who, upon meeting an enigmatic similar-looking stranger, comes to realise that there's nothing to say your soulmate has to be a good person. Silent longing and joyful affirmation hold fast against moments of nauseating cruelty, weaving together in an utterly original, unmissable rarity.
Sit. Stay. Good dog.
John Wick was fantastic. John Wick Chapter 2, also fantastic. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum is the third consecutive film in this saga that is fantastic. It's the best action series that isn't called The Raid. What more do you want? Director Sion Sono takes a collage of extremely problematic ideas and not only runs with them, but shapes the whole thing into a knowing marathon of self-awareness and perverse coldness. A monstrous sociopath builds a literal cult of personality around his sadistic whims, a serial killer stalks the countryside, there are flashbacks within flashbacks and films within films. The forest of love is too much in every sense, but its excesses are what makes it so memorable. Baffling, indulgent, and compelling to the bitter end. In one of 2019's most fearless and flawlessly judged dramatic performances, Olivia Wilde deftly maneuvers between righteous fury, crushing vulnerability, and the purgatorial doldrums of a life shattered by abuse. The subject matter is grueling, yet handled with such considered tact that it never feels anything less than an honest, timely reckoning.
Now, for something like this, you're gonna need two guns. The one you're gonna use, and a backup.
An elegy to the type of plain-spoken, brick-through-a-plate-glass-window gangster epic Scorsese defined for the last few generations, The Irishman is daunting in its breadth, show-stopping prowess, and the 3.5 hours it takes to watch the damn thing. At times it veers dangerously close to a bloated victory lap for all concerned, but that's a small price to pay for such a thoughtful, frank, and handsome evening with such an array of all-time talent, some of whom haven't been this great in years.
What is that? Hair of the dog?
It's the best cure.
We're on vacation, right?
American horror has a sanitation problem. It's far too sanitized, so it's with great relish that I can report the perfection is repulsive. Despicable, twisted, hide-behind-your-hands nastiness of the lowest order, and it's all the better for it. With more than a handful of transgressive winks towards Asian extreme cinema, this is a wicked, unbelievably gore-filled gem.
You look like a badger.
Oh.
Are you going to cry? Really?
Yorgos Lanthimos knows how to get the most uncomfortable laughs from the room, finding the wry, smirking giggles in even the bleakest facets of human nature. The favourite may seem more merchant ivory than anything he's made before, but the ashen awkwardness of its biting comedy is as present as it's ever been in this wickedly funny and beguiling marriage of formal presentation and petulant, childish passive aggression. This would have been in my top 10, but as it was released on the first day of 2019 over here in the UK, it narrowly got bumped by the sudden influx of winter goodness making inroads for the top 10. But this right here is undoubtedly one of the best times I had at the cinema this year. Dishonourable mentions.
You want me to fix you up some tea?
No, thank you.
More of a coffee drinker, huh?
Perhaps the most curious thing about this, quite frankly, very poor thriller is that it comes from the director of the tremendous 1922. This here is the lukewarm, lethargic product of an idea that can't sustain its own runtime. It's such a nothing film, I'd rather just take this opportunity once again to say, in John Wick Part 3, he literally kills someone with the hind legs of a horse. How would you take a concept as inherently fun as Hard Rain but with alligators instead of bank robbers, and make it this po-faced, plodding and shallow? A hackneyed, bloodless screenplay, an annoyingly low body count, and leads devoid of anything approaching personality face off against these big-toothed CGI baddies, as the audience is slowly forced to consider, exactly how many times can I watch someone get kind of caught in a crawl space only to escape just in the nick of time? Watch Lake Placid with a few beers and push this back down the plug hole.
Oh, I think we got his attention.
With 3 American Godzilla movies in 2 decades and change, this is the best of a bad bunch, and that's not saying very much at all. Unfortunately for those starving for kaiju schlock, we're forced to endure a starter of sawdust screenplay and the main course of boring, underlit expository monologues before we're handed a sorbet of smashing, clashing giants. Instead of feeling like a king of the monsters, Godzilla is once again reduced to a servant of tepid, overlong slop.
You see, I have a very strict no men in black policy.
Oh, God. I don't blame you. Who'd want those assholes coming in here? Men in black, morons in black, if you ask me.
How do you fix a knackered franchise that used up all its charm and hijinks in the first film? You keep doing the same thing again and again and hope that lightning strikes in the same place. Well, I wish it had, if only to wake me from the boring stupor of this listless, foot-dragging slog. It takes two charming leads and makes them inert, all while sullying the good name of Emma Thompson with this yawning gasp of irrelevance. Those neuralizers must have been real, because I forgot everything about it within seconds of walking out of the cinema. Unfortunately for those of us looking for a dumb slice of good times pie, a lot of this film is incomprehensible when it should have just been irresistibly silly. Forgettable characters, borderline jingoistic celebrations of Chinese patriotism, and a world that feels as hollow as it is lifeless. Finding excitement in the wandering earth is like searching for a taste of honey by headbutting a hornet's nest. It's misguided, nowhere near as fun as it sounds, and will leave you feeling stung, confused, and wondering why you tried something so stupid to begin with.
No one wants to play with the clown anymore. Play a game with me, would you?
After two live-action adaptations and a book that reads like a document of Stephen King's more trying indulgences, It Chapter 2 finally proves once and for all the problem with this story. The adult-oriented second half is much, much less interesting than the childhood triumphs of the first. You can divide the film into 3 hour-long chunks. 1, the gang reunites and reminisces about a film we've already seen. 2, rinse and repeat of loud CGI monster chasing each character for a bit. 3, unsatisfying and overlong tongue-chewingly lame resolution. Look, we all love Bill Hader, and you can watch the first 6 episodes of Barry in the time it takes to watch this, and you'll get a lot more out of that experience.
I further the realm I analyze.
Forgive me,
Fuck.
With a cast this captivating and the writer-director of Nightcrawler, aka we owe Jake Gyllenhaal an Oscar, the scene was set for a delicious decimation of the world of modern art. What we got was a substandard episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, mashed up with extremely beautiful people looking at expensive things for longer than they should be allowed. What starts as a cultural satire soon slides into the kind of moronic superficiality it seems to think it's sending up.
Wanna fight?
It should go without saying, but then again we live in toxic times, so let me get this out of the way. I like most Marvel movies well enough. I think Brie Larson is an outstanding actor, and the misogynistic, hateful discourse around this film was despicable, stupid, and boneheadedly ignorant men's rights bollocks. Now I've cleared the air, I'm free to say I didn't like Captain Marvel at all. The opening act was a motion sickness-inducing mess of disparate, choppily edited nonsense, and the rest was vapid, vacant spectacle without much to say about anything. The cat was cute though. Before the all-too-inevitable reboot of my beloved Final Destination series, here we have a rip-off of all the intellectual and creative flair of a dog dragging their anus across the living room carpet. Fitting very much into the same mold as last year's Truth or Dare, it's a high-concept horror that doesn't have the blood or sense of humour to honour its ludicrous premise. Sit it alongside Cell, One Missed Call, and that one gag from Forgetting Sarah Marshall, when considering why mobile phones aren't scary.
I can't believe you guys are buying into this bullshit. I mean, he's a fucking head case. Look at him.
Fractured is basically Flight Plan if it was half remembered by an anesthetised donkey and written in finger paint. Sam Worthington continues to ply his trade as an actor who never learned how to act, and I'd say points for trying, but once again he just kind of winces and contorts his lips around, like some sort of twitching mannequin, in the vain hope that it'll come across as a performance. I've seen better acting from a shoe wearing sunglasses. What the fuck am I talking about? Those were our honourable and dishonourable mentions of 2019. Tune in next time for entries 10 through 6 of our best films of the year. Special shout out to our Patreon producers Nicholas Leigh Revere, Claire MD, and Jennifer C, and a most honourable mention of all for our Patreons who help keep this channel alive. If you'd like to support us for as little as $1 a month, head on over to our Patreon at the link in the description below, and show that dumbass YouTube algorithm who's boss by liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting and all that absolute nonsense I hate to have to say. What were the good and bad films this year that didn't quite make the cut of your best or worst lists? Let us know in the comments below, or just feel free to say cool stuff John Wick did so I can reply with that was a cool thing John Wick did. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.